Hey everybody, MichaelBtheGameGenie. In today's video, we're going to be revisiting SpeakerGate with Arcade1Up and the new wave of cabinets. They just don't seem to have the same level of volume and level of bass. Well, today, I'm going to be doing a little bit of an experiment to see if it is in fact the speakers. We'll talk more about it right after this. So that's right, guys. You may be familiar. A couple months back, I did a video called Arcade1Up SpeakerGate, and I was really taking a look at the new wave of cabinets coming out from Arcade1Up, starting with Big Blue, going into the new 4-player cabinets, Turtles in Time, Simpsons, X-Men. All these cabinets seem to have one thing in common. There was something off about the audio. Now, I was in love with the Arcade1Up audio going all the way back to Wave 3. I thought it sounded fantastic, it had booming noise, and it just sounded great, but something with the speakers seems to be missing. A lot of times when you buy a cheaper TV, you can tell something's off with the speakers as the sound just doesn't sound right. It sounds almost tinny, and that's kind of what the experience has been like with the new speakers. I reached out to John D from Arcade1Up at the time and asked him, has anything changed? But he said that they're using these exact same speakers. So we didn't know exactly what was causing this issue. For a long time now, I've wanted to test out this hypothesis myself that it might be a change to the speakers or new speakers. And as you guys might know or might not know, I'm something of a scientist myself, so I decided to do my own test, and here are the results. So guys, for this experiment, we're going to use 3 specific cabinets. These are the ones that I have highlighted here for you guys to view. First up is the Street Fighter II Big Blue cabinet. This cabinet was the first in the wave of new cabinets from Arcade1Up that seemingly had audio issues. Now, while this cabinet doesn't sound bad by any means, it does sound very low. It has very low volume and some missing bass. So this is the first one I noticed on, and at that time I reached out to John D and said, is there something wrong with the audio in the cabinets? Are you guys using a new speaker? And he identified, no, they're in fact using the same speakers that they've always been using. Next up is the speaker that's going to be the standard for testing, and that is X-Men vs. Street Fighter. I'm using this cabinet because of its proximity between these other 2 cabinets and the fact we all know this one has great booming audio with tons of bass. So if it's a question of the speakers specifically, we know the speakers on this cabinet are badass. Next up is the Simpsons cabinet, Arcade1Up The Simpsons. We all love The Simpsons, and you know what? It is a pretty loud cabinet, but it is noticeably missing that familiar bass we get from Arcade1Up cabinets. So we know there has been an update and the audio has slightly improved, but unfortunately it is still missing that bass. So we're hoping to see if the speakers in the X-Men cab will give it the bass boost it needs. So guys, again, what we're going to do here is utilize the speakers in the X-Men vs. Street Fighter cab, unplug the speakers from each of the other cabinets, and then plug in the speakers from X-Men vs. Street Fighter that we know work well to see how it performs with the cabinet upon startup. So I do want to clarify what we're doing here is we're setting all of these cabinets at 13, level 13 for the volume, so it's comparative to every other cabinet in this experiment. So what I want to do first is show you the initial startup of each of the cabinets we're going to be talking about here, how it sounds and how the gameplay sounds and how it sounds in the initial startup mode as a stock comparison, and then we're going to compare it to how the audio sounds plugged into the new set of speakers.
X-Men versus Street Fighter!
Now, you're all probably at this point saying, Mike, I don't know what the problem is here. That actually sounded pretty great. I don't know how well that my camera and this setup is going to pick it up. However, after hearing the startup for Marvel vs. Street Fighter, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, and then hearing the startup for Street Fighter 2 Big Blue, there is a slight difference there. Now, if you want an exact apples-to-apples differences, let me show you the startup for the Capcom Legacy and then Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition. Right? That's what I'm talking about. That loud, booming, bass-tastic sound coming from the Capcom Legacy makes me want to, stay away from Oprah. Just go out and kill people. And there's a huge difference between that and the Street Fighter 2 Big Blue. Anyways, let's get to it. So we're going to plug in the speakers for the X-Men vs. Street Fighter cab into the Street Fighter 2 Big Blue and see if it makes any difference. So guys, what do you think? To me, I didn't really notice that much of a difference. Not as much as I was expecting. It might sound just a slight bit louder, but realistically, I kind of got the same sound as with the stock speakers on Big Blue. I'm kind of surprised. I expected more, but maybe there is something to this, and it's not the speakers, and it's a programming issue. Anyways, let's move on and try the next test. First up is the Arcade1Up Simpsons cab with the stock speakers. Now let's plug in the X-Men vs. Street Fighter speakers to the Simpsons cab and see what happens. So that was extremely weird. I didn't get a huge improvement in the quality of the audio while plugging into the X-Men vs. Street Fighter speakers into the Simpsons cab, but I did notice some serious audio missing. Like, it seemed like the speaker channel for maybe the right speaker seemed to be a little bit off. There seemed to be repeating sounds, missing sounds. I don't know if this has to do with the update and then connecting the new pair of speakers to it or what, but that's definitely not what I was expecting. But anyways, again, connecting a better pair of speakers to the Simpsons cab didn't fix the audio issues. So, in conclusion, I guess SpeakerGate isn't really SpeakerGate after all. It looks like it's sound programming gate. Hopefully, since we know this is not a hardware issue, this is something that Arcade1Up can fix somehow. I hope they figure out what's going on in terms of the way this was developed and give us back that familiar bass we all know and love. Now, I'm not saying the sound is terrible. I mean, it's all perfectly usable. It's just not as good as it was, and that's what we need to fix. Anyways, guys, let me know, have you noticed audio issues between these cabinets? Have you been following along with SpeakerGate? What do you think of this revelation that, honestly, maybe it's not the speakers after all? I really thought that Arcade1Up had either cheaped out on speakers or the manufacturer that was providing the speakers to Arcade1Up had cheaped out on parts, but looks like that's not it. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching today. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day. This is Michael B. the Game Genie, and I'll talk to you next time.